And we are live. Thank you to the technology gods for making this possible today. If you're a parent joining with us, my guess is you would like to make sure that your child is really actively participating and learning in the classroom and not sitting at a back table with a para. If you are an educator joining us today, I bet you would love some new ideas about how to make your lessons even more inclusive. And we are lucky because we have two guests with us today. Let me bring on Kristie and Julie. I know, it's always like, how do we all fit in this?
There you go.
And we are going to be, or Julie and Kristie are going to be sharing some time-tested, evidence-based practices on making lessons more inclusive in the classrooms. And we have some wonderful giveaways. We have one giveaway we'll be giving today. And the way that you enter is make comments, add questions, share ideas that you have, because the more you comment, the more chances you get. We have a very valuable free ticket to the Summer Leadership Institute this August, which is virtual. So you don't have to worry about flying to Syracuse. And that ticket we're going to give away tomorrow evening, Friday evening at midnight Eastern Standard Time. That allows people that are watching the replay to also have a chance to earn the ticket or win the ticket. So either if you're live or watching the replay, you have a chance to win that ticket for the Summer Leadership Institute. And we'll talk a little bit about that later in our show. So Dr. Kristie, and it was like I was going to practice her name, but I didn't have. So I feel like I have to honor you. So it's Dr. Kristie Pretti-Frontczak.
Perfect. 10 out of 10. You're done for the day. When you get that right, you can just call it a day.
And Dr. Julie Causton. And we haven't had you guys on our show in a while, but you are always a fan favorite, and we are excited for what you're going to be sharing with us today. So take it away.
Sounds fabulous. And Charmaine, it's mutual. We're big fans of your work too. And we're fans of a lot of your fans, which is kind of fun. So some of our best friends all hang around together, which we just love. And we're hopeful you're here.
Yeah, maybe that's okay. No worries. I just wanted to give the link that everybody can get the resources we talk about today and the free Because of Oliver.
Yes,
eBook. But you can do that link too, or whatever's easy. Yeah, that one. There you go. You got so many skills. Like I'm just like, old school. I want to put it in the chat, and you're like, boom. So there you go.
Charmaine, here's where we are, and we're just starting to talk about secrets to make any lesson more inclusive. So if you know kind of who we are, what we do, Kristie and I spend our whole life, just like Charmaine, helping people get access to more inclusive schools. And although Charmaine works on the side of helping families, we usually work on the side of helping school systems become wildly inclusive. And so today's presentation that we're going to do with Charmaine is Secrets for Creating Inclusive Schools as a start. I'm Dr. Julie Causton, and today I'm answering the question, what does inclusive education look like? In a story called Because of Oliver. Here is Oliver. He loves being at school with his friends. He is very, very busy. He likes to walk, really enjoys bouncing. He is fascinated by both insects and trains. He used to be in a room for students who had similar characteristics. His particular room was labeled autism. When he was in that labeled room, it made the hard parts even harder. It was harder to talk with students who struggled to talk. It was harder to make friends with others who struggled to make friends. He could not learn from and make friends with other students in other rooms. And worse yet, students could not learn from and make friends with him. But now Oliver is in a second grade inclusive classroom with 32 students, where lines are not drawn between students. In this classroom, every person is valued for the ways they are different and alike. Oliver's class has two teachers, Miss Olaya and Miss Maisel. As you already know, teachers are some of the most creative sort of people. This story is about what happens when these two teachers change a lesson, all because of Oliver. This lesson was about parts of a story. The students would learn about character, setting, and plot. The teachers had some plans. They would have the students sit crisscross applesauce on the floor, and Miss Maisel would read a book about a monster under a bed, and Miss Olaya would act out some of the very best parts. Students would raise their hand and answer the questions, and write with a pencil about the plot. They then would each draw the monster from the book. It was going to be a good lesson, but as Oliver's teachers thought about their plan, they realized this lesson might not work for someone who does not like to sit, or can't raise his hand, or answer questions, and does not write with a pencil. Luckily, Oliver's teachers both know about the creative magic of inclusion. They believe when they plan a lesson for their class, they are planning for everyone in their class. So the teachers got together and changed the lesson because of Oliver. They first wrote a list and crossed out what Oliver can't do, and circled what he can do. They took the negative list that came with Oliver, crossed out the negative words, and circled the positive words. From Oliver can't sit to Oliver loves to move. He does not talk to he can point, draw, and smile to communicate. He won't sit still to he works best when standing and bouncing. He does not write to is starting to type on a keyboard. He has trouble starting a task to starts a task with the help of a friend. Focused on trains to is an expert on trains. Obsessed by insects to is an insect scholar. Starting with these circles, the teachers have created access points. Access points are just a student's best way of learning. Now these teachers have almost everything they need to plan their inclusive lesson. Next, they had to change the rules of the lesson. From students must sit crisscross applesauce to students can stand or bounce to listen. Students must raise hands to answer questions to students can point to an answer, tell a friend, or draw their answer. From a student must write with a pencil to students can write with a pencil, a crayon, a marker, or even type. From students must draw the monster in the book to students can create their very own monster using their favorite things. From students must do things independently to every student can get help from their friends. Let's watch this new lesson in action. When the monster lesson began, Oliver chose to stand just to the side of the teacher. It turns out some students sat on the floor, one sat on a ball and bounced, and several students stood near the back of the rug. Oliver stood and watched as Miss Maisel read the story and Miss Olaya acted out the very best parts. Next, it was time for questions. The teacher asked who were the characters in the story. Most students turned to a friend and said their answer. 3 students drew their answer, and 1 student pointed to an answer and smiled. 2 students needed a reminder not to roll on the carpet, and 1 student needed a reminder not to interrupt. Next, it was time to write the plot. Petra chose a bright green marker, her favorite color. Oliver and Sam both typed their answers in their very favorite fonts. Chloe used a fresh orange crayon because she loves the smell of new crayons. And Stanley B was the only one who chose to use a pencil, a sharpened number 2 pencil. When the students learned that they could create their own monster, they cheered with delight. However, Oliver did not like the loud noise of the cheering. He covered his ears and began to cry. Trayvon put his hand on Oliver's back and grabbed his noise-blocking headphones and handed them to him. He told Oliver it would be okay. Oliver slowly uncovered his ears and put on his headphones and stopped crying. Oliver did not start making his monster at first, but Aiden reminded him to get started. It turns out Chloe and Daniel both needed reminders from their friends too. Stanley helped Rosie when her glue stick broke. Oliver helped Ellie. He typed the box when Ellie asked him where the glitter was. Oliver bounced and hummed loudly as he worked. Chloe asked him to hum quieter, and he did. Everyone got to use materials from the art table to create their own monster. Rosie's had a baseball bat, arms, and legs. Douglas's was pink and wore a superhero cape. Ruthie's looked quite a bit like her new puppy. And Oliver's had, you guessed it, 6 insect legs, a real train body, and a set of feathery antennae. The old lesson was good, but this new lesson turned out to be better, much better. Better for Rosie, Trayvon, Petra, both Stanleys, Sam, Daniel, Ami, Chloe, better for everyone. And this new lesson was much better for Oliver. It turns out this lesson, this class, and this school are all so much better because of Oliver. Okay, we got a chance to watch it, and people are writing lovely comments on Facebook. Keep them coming. So we'd love to hear, what did you notice when you watched because of Oliver? A lot of people were thinking of cool ways they could share and show this video. And Kristie, thank you for putting that in the chat, how people can get the video just as it is.
Yeah. So 2 things, y'all. The video, as you just saw it, the link is in the Facebook comment stream now. Julie published that through PBS, so it's free to use and reuse. The second link, the one you see on your screen and is in the Facebook chat, is if you want to get a free ebook. So the whole story is actually like a children's book, really for adults. And Julie produced it in an ebook or a PDF form so that you can read it and share it that way as well. So one of my favorite parts from the story is when the teachers sat down and did what Julie calls, they turned lead to gold. So I'm going to share my screen. We're going to walk you through how the teachers did this thing called turning lead to gold and building on children's strengths, which is our first tip for making any lesson more inclusive. So Julie, I'm going to share.
Great.
I'm going to get you there. I got this figured out.
Okay. So if you saw when Oliver's teachers first designed the lesson, what they did is transform the language about Oliver and about his skills. And what they did is they ignored his deficits. They didn't use his deficits to plan a lesson. Instead, they used his strengths. So even in the Facebook chat, I don't know what it's called, comment section, go ahead and put, what did you notice? What were the strengths that they used to come up with how to create the lesson?
Yeah, if you were able to kind of capture that when they thought about what can Oliver do? What are the things that he enjoys or is proficient or are emerging? And this is where they started, because they're going to create what we call access points. So how did he access that lesson? By the way that they went through and looked about the strengths.
Yeah. So Kimberly said like a larger strength, which is they saw him as a valuable member who needed to be in the classroom, who needed to be with. They saw him as having a strength. I'll just share one idea in movement. He's a person that needs and wants to move all the time. So instead of saying he can't sit still, they figured out a way to build in movement for not just Oliver, but for anyone else. So the concept is you take the lead words, the heavy words, and you turn them into gold as a secret or a strategy to create lessons that are inclusive. So I am certain that families who are with us today have heard words or phrases about their child that have not sat well with them. And it is when we hyper-focus on deficits or negative aspects of parts of a human being. And so what we ask for folks to do is move from those lead words to those gold words.
And what I think is important is that Julie didn't say put on rose-colored glasses and ignore that the student needs support. all of us as humans need support at different times, and we have different levels and types and preferences. The idea is that we build upon what I am able to do, what I enjoy doing, what comes easily, or at least what I'm learning to do. You might have heard in the story that he's starting to type to communicate. So it didn't say he's a proficient typist with no errors. He's just starting to use that mode. So how do we incorporate that? And so then we take those words that are, as Julie said, heavy and lead, and really just are dead end. They don't tell us anything about what do we do. But if we start to see them in the gold kind of way, now we can see room for growth and things that we can move from, or move towards, I guess.
Yeah, that's great. I was also thinking, Kristie, what they didn't say is Oliver can't speak, right? They didn't say that. They didn't say non-communicative. They said starting to type to communicate. Uses eye gaze.
He's 5 grades off of grade level. Well, he's only a little kid, but you know what I mean? Like, what does that help us know when kids are, people, Julie says all the time, like they're so low, or they're not on grade level, or they can't do things the same kids their age. Yeah, there's a lot of things I can't do with people my age, but there are a lot of things I can do.
That's right. So turning lead to gold is one of our first secrets, and it is critical to the success of our students in inclusive settings. We have to move those lead words to gold words. And Kristie, do you want to do the next one?
Okay. Next slide.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Jill.
Yeah. So if you saw in Oliver, they crossed out anything negative, they circled anything positive, and they added strengths to the lesson planning itself. So when you're planning a full lesson and you have a student like Oliver in your class, you're going to be thinking about Oliver in particular while thinking about all the other students. And you're going to be thinking about creating a positive student profile for them. Cross out negative words, circle positive words, add 3 or 4 strengths. In fact, you might even do this on your children's IEPs.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, Julie. Go ahead and expand upon that idea.
So if you look at present level of educational performance, you can re-story your own children by crossing out those negative words, circling any positive words, and adding a bunch more strengths that actually support their learning.
So directly at an IEP meeting, at a parent-teacher conference, anytime. There's Charmaine. Yeah, sorry. I'm watching on Facebook, so I have a delayed response to the laughing. Sorry, y'all. But that idea, and parents and family members, the idea is you start to model. So if they say, like, what Kimberly said, that she hears so many times a year, not at his level. You can model and say, and it's been my experience, what he is able to do, what is at his level, what is the zone of proximal development for him, be fancy as you want, is fill in the blank. And you start to model and show what they are able to do that we can leverage, build upon, work from.
Yeah. So you crack me up too, Charmaine. That's really fun. Thanks for celebrating that with us. We have our second big secret.
Okay, sorry, Julie. Yeah. It's a little hard between Facebook and this and live. So you tell me if I can help a little better.
Okay. You're doing great. We love new technology formats. It's giving us a lot of opportunity to grow right now. So our second secret is, drum roll please, trying on entirely different lenses. And so, Kristie, what do we mean when we say lenses? Can you explain that?
Yeah, and I'm going to ask some of our good friends that are here in Facebook Live with us, or those of you who have seen this before when we do the Winnie the Pooh, be thinking about what does it mean to you to try on different lenses. So we've already said build from their strengths, turn lead to gold. But it's bigger than that, because we can go one kid at a time, one IEP at a time, one lesson at a time. And that's great, right? And especially if you can convince folks that by helping this one student, it helps all the students. They start to see that benefit. but there's some systems level things that need to change. So Julie and I were in Colorado the other day talking to leaders, and we said, how many words in your eligibility for early childhood special ed and early intervention, what words do you use that feel heavy, that are like lead? And they're like, well, like developmental delay or disorder or speech and language impairment or atypical. And they just went on and on. Julie, do you remember any others that come to mind really quickly? They had such a good list.
Yeah, they were talking about any words that reminded them of the medical model. And so they said things like therapy, therapist. They talked about, delayed difference, disorder, all those words that you said. Yeah, it was really fabulous.
We were like, oh, right. The whole system is set up to look at disability as something that is a problem, something that we need to fix over there with certain people with special training. And the more different you are, the further away you need to be with people with more and more specialized training. So we're gonna change the lens entirely and say the whole system needs to view our identity around ability differently. So that's what I would say.
Charmaine, your set of glasses that you have over there is pretty spectacular.
I know. These are the simple ways I amuse myself.
Julie's all for it. Don't you worry.
We should hang out more, Charmaine. This is very fun. So why we're talking about lens really is this: how we as a system see, think about, write about, and understand disability has a real impact on how we support, teach, and give access to all students. So what we mean and why it matters that you change your lens, and not you probably if you're listening, but you get to help others change their lens, is that when we change our lens, we teach students differently. So let's give a really fun example. Yeah, sorry, Karen. Karen said the whole idea of intervention.
Yeah.
Intervention is a yucky word. Right, because all of us here have deficit areas. I don't really want an intervention ever, right? I would love support for sure. I would love a little bit of help when I need it, right? And I would also love to be seen as a whole person who's going to struggle with some things, and I'm still completely valued. So let's play a little game. If you've seen us do this, you can play along with us in the comment section. If you haven't, you can play along too. So what we have here are Winnie the Pooh characters, and we've got descriptions of them. We've got Winnie the Pooh, who's happy, pleasure seeker, relaxed. Eeyore is loyal, lovable, obstacle finder. Piglet is sensitive, empathetic, and kind. Tigger is energetic, quick, and fun. Owl is wise, gives advice, is a philosopher. And Rabbit is organized, detailed, rule follower. Take a moment, and you can answer in the comments in any way. I have two questions. The first is, are these descriptions of these characters positive, negative, or neutral? And then the second question, and you can answer in any order, is if you yourself were to identify with one of these Winnie the Pooh characters, who would you identify with today?
And I think what's really key, as Julie asked you to think about, who do you feel like today? Notice that she did not say, hey, Kimberly, I think you're kind of like an Eeyore today. She said, how do you identify? What do you see as your strengths? Even though we might know each other really well, it's really interesting as we move through this activity, how it feels when someone gives you a label versus when you take on a label, and even who they are. So Julie, we've got some rabbits, we've got some poos, we've got quite a few Eeyores.
Mm-hmm. Good. So I would say you're right. We've got all sorts of folks here, Kristie, and also people are saying these feel like positive descriptors of these characters. So you're correct in terms of when Kristie and I created this, we're using a lens of positivity. I think one of the easiest ones to see is with Eeyore. And we called Eeyore an obstacle finder, right? We had to get a little creative. Now, if you've watched a lot of Winnie the Pooh lately, you'll know that Eeyore walks around and he finds a lot of obstacles. He finds them, he points them out, he shows folks where the obstacles lie. We're working hard to see that as a strength, and yet it's an incredible strength if you actually think about it. So now we're going to switch the lens to the next lens. So from the positive lens of these words here to this negative list.
Sorry, Julie, I went too far. I clicked too many times. Okay, there you go.
You're fine. So we've got Pooh is gluttonous and dull. Eeyore is pessimist and an energy drain. Piglet is nervous and neurotic. Tigger is hyper, overactive, loud. Owl is self-centered and egotistical. And Rabbit is bossy and inflexible. So what we'd love for you to look at is now this is a negative lens. It is actually pretty concerning to look at these characters through this lens. We definitely do not recommend using a negative lens. However, in school systems, we're often asked to, or our systems require us to, or at least we believe they do, to use deficit-based thinking. Yeah, and so
sorry, Julie, go ahead.
Well, some people are saying yuck and ouch, and exactly, that's the point, is that when we see humans with this lens, we're going to actually probably cause harm.
And it's so ingrained in the system. So many of you are like, but we have to get the kid eligible in order to give them the services and supports they need. And there's so much truth to that we have to figure out how much of a delay or disorder or disability exists, how many standard deviations below the mean in some test or not that is absolutely biased and invalid for young kids in particular, or kids who are different. Then we get them eligible. And for me, I go, okay, even if we have to do that, and we haven't changed that system yet, can we at least, once we get to the IEP, stop redetermining eligibility? And then certainly by the time we get to a lesson, can we stop redetermining there's a delay or a disability or a difference? Meaning, if for today we cannot change the system of how students get the supports and services they need, do it fast. Then stop that and take on that lens of looking at them from a positive view, from a strength-based view, from the gold view of what they can do, and then start to write IEPs from that lens and plan lessons from that lens.
So we're going to take it one more set of sad news. So we went from a positive lens to a negative lens, and now you're going to see these Winnie the Pooh characters from a medical lens. And we do not recommend this practice. However, we see it all the time in school settings, is that we often medicalize difference. So we move away from just seeing disability as a difference and instead start to see it as a actual disorder, right? And we use medical words to think about that. Today, we need you to hear this. We need to move away from the medical lens. We need to move away from the deficit-based lens and instead use a positive lens to look at our students so that we can best reach and teach them by turning lead to gold.
So this is our secret number 2. When you're doing your lesson design, the child is already in your classroom. And let's hope that through the strong advocacy of many of the families that are on today and the work of many inclusion experts and students that have lived this experience, the students actually in a general ed classroom with general ed peers, general ed content. Great. Now, how do we make sure this lesson is like the one for Because of Oliver? And so it's still asking us to change our lens away from seeing the student from a medical lens to an equity lens. So Julie, do you want to just go ahead and do the back and forth today?
Yeah, I love this. So we're asking you to use an equity-based lens when you look at students. We're asking you to model it. We're asking you to share it with your school systems. And for all of those beautiful educators that are with us today, we're going to ask people to start to think in these ways, because this is the secret to creating really, really inclusive schools, classrooms, and lessons. Okay, so the medical lens, outdated. We don't want to use it anymore. What we used to think is disability is just within the human. But what we now know in the equity lens is disability is a socially constructed identity. Socially constructed meaning we've made up the 13 federal categories of disability. We've decided you qualify, but you don't. It's a human decision. We've socially created it, and it's an identity. So for example, I have ADHD as an attribute. It is part of my identity, and it is part of an identity that I embrace. I have struggles every single day to do lots of things because of that label, but I also have a superpower in ADHD. And so I consider it part of my identity. Now, I don't mind talking about it from my own perspective, but if someone else were to say, she has ADHD, you know, that speaker with ADHD, I wouldn't necessarily, depending upon the human, like it. Okay? In the medical lens, it's an individual pathology or impairment, meaning something's wrong with the human. In the equity lens, the problem is the barriers, okay? The barriers that disable people. Before, the aim was to fix or remediate. Now, in an equity lens, the aim is to provide just right supports. Do you see the difference? If you're just providing supports instead of trying to fix a student, it's a very different task. On the medical lens, focus on the label as the problem, not the system. So educators say this to us all the time. We would do inclusion. It's just we've got these kids that are really low, right? Well, that's confusing to me because we're putting the onus of the problem on the kids instead of our system is the problem. And all we have to do is provide access points and look at them through a equity lens and provide supports that are just right. And then it's not a problem. Okay. So it's
Julie,
really,
I think sometimes people get close to the system issue. So they'll say that classroom is too much for this student. That classroom will make this student even feel worse about themselves. It's doing a disservice to the student. This classroom can't meet their needs. So they're close. They're naming that there's something system-wide that's not a match, but they're still putting it on the kid as a rite of passage. The kid has to be ready for the classroom that's not ready for them. The kid has to have a certain set of skills or be able to show that they'll benefit from this versus saying, there's something really wrong with how we have classrooms set up for mini learners. And we need to change how we're doing education, for sure in the United States, to make it a match for kids with diverse abilities.
Yeah, absolutely. And Charmaine said it really well too. It's a system failure, not a failure of the child, right? The last one is that we ignore systemic inequities in the medical lens. We act as if special ed is good for all kids. We act as if what we have in place works. And in reality, there are huge systemic inequities at play if we're not really thinking about this equity lens. Okay. And so that's what we're asking people to do is switch from a secret is to switch from that medical model to the equity lens.
Okay, so let's check the time, check what we're doing. I want to get people that handout, so I'll do that in a minute. So we have done 2 secrets of 3 so far, and I will repost in the Facebook comments how you can get all of our secrets, the PowerPoint, the eBook, all of that. So Julie, the third one is also part of the giveaway. I don't know if Charmaine, you want to explain the giveaway as well.
The other thing is a ticket to the Summer Leadership Institute. You have a chance between now and midnight tomorrow, Friday evening, Eastern Standard Time, to reply, to make more comments, to come back with more questions. And tomorrow, Friday night, we'll draw the winner for the ticket. This afternoon, we have a special shirt that we'll be giving away. So keep your comments and questions coming.
Okay, so drum roll, please. If you're at your desk, you need to do this right now. I don't know how many of you have ever joined us for our Summer Leadership Institute, but it is a 3-day extravaganza about inclusive education. And we're going to uncover hundreds of secrets that really inclusive school systems use. So in really inclusive school systems, they use a positive approach to describing their students. They use a strength-based and equity-based lens, and they do so much more. So we have 3 days. And I hope you're just looking at the lineup and thinking, are you kidding me? Judy Human is joining us. Are you joking? Jonathan Fields is coming. I don't know if anyone noticed. Yeah, this is such a great lineup, Adrienne. If you want your school system to be really, really inclusive, I would put a lot of effort in getting them, meaning your leadership team or your entire school system, to this 3-day event. Because Kristie calls it a rabbit hole. I call it a PhD, but essentially we give you 3 days of the very best training around inclusive practices around. And I know, right? How did we get this lineup? It's kind of amazing. And so like, for example, someone said, my son is the first student with Down syndrome fully included in the middle school. And the answer to that is they absolutely should come, especially if you're a trailblazer like that. It is virtual. It is August 8th through 10th, and it's going to be amazing. And Charmaine has said a couple times, we're giving away a ticket to the Summer Leadership Institute for those people here who are with us on Facebook or after watching it on the playback. I mean, all you got to do is go, oh my gosh, Shelley Moore? Wait, Bettina Love? I hope that's what's happening in your brains.
And so we really, like Julie said, that's our third secret, because there's going to be hundreds of secrets shared by these amazing folks. There's even more, but these are some of the folks that are going to be really essential to the conversations that we're going to be having for 3 days. They're all recorded. You have access to all of the recording for a year. So it's like your PD is all ready for a year. If you need inspiration, or if you need to revisit it, or you have new teachers or new speech language pathologists, who knows what might be going on next year. This way you'll have all kinds of ways to create more inclusive systems at your fingertips. And so today we wanted to give away really 3 things. So one, everybody can get the ebook of Because of Oliver and the resources that we've shared in the handout, so you don't have to go back through the chat and grab them. We'll make sure you get that. That's everyone. Somebody's going to win a t-shirt, which we're going to give away now, I believe. And then some lucky person will win VIP pass to SLI. I like to see if I can make sentences with only acronyms between today and tomorrow night. So keep chatting to increase your odds of winning.
Yes.
I also want to answer Susan's question. Really good question. The leadership conference is good for principals, special ed directors. Yes and yes. So most districts will send their leadership team to the Summer Leadership Institute, and many will get what's called a district license. So everybody in the district can have access to all of it. It's also for teacher leaders and parent leaders. Okay. So just know that if you're just like, I want to go and know all this stuff and I'm a parent, yes, you are a leader in our school systems. And many of you are the ones that are leading our schools to become more inclusive. So we 100% think of you as a leader when we say the Summer Leadership Institute. We're talking about families, we're talking about school educators, and then obviously school administrators. Yeah, Dan. And Dan went last year. If anyone has been, and you thought if anyone has been, and you have any comments at all about it, put them in the chat to help people know if they should attend or not. So just go ahead and share your honest opinion if you've been. What's it like? What's it about? What's it for? All those kinds of things. Okay. Kristie, can you show the t-shirt?
Yep, I can do that. All of them? Yeah, because they're going to have to pick. So we're
Yeah.
Okay. I got to get the right tab. Charmaine's going to help us figure out how we're going to give a t-shirt away, but Julie's asking me to show you all of your options. And then you're going to reach out to me and say, I want this one or something like that. So I'm almost there, Julie.
You're doing great. So these
like,
t-shirts are designed every year for the Summer Leadership Institute. We are getting these t-shirts designed right now, so they're ready to go, because we want people to have their shirts, be wearing their shirts to their IEP meetings. All that the shirts do is just add an element of joy and fun, but also help you add the ripple effect as you walk around in the world, showing your inclusive shirts. So we've got, if you can be anything, be inclusive. That's a new one this year. We've got the Circle Maker t-shirt. So how do we be a circle maker? Flight risk is one of my favorite. I don't know if anyone has a kid who's been called a flight risk, but that's amazing. We just have plain old inclusive schooling shirts, which we really love. Communication is a right. Non-compliance is a life skill.
That's probably one of my favorites.
It's my favorite too. If there's going to be a life skills class, it ought to be a class in non-compliance, as far as I'm concerned. Okay. And then we've got Everyone Belongs shirt. We have the new rainbow version, which we love. We've got a shirt that says Presume Inclusion. That looks beautiful as you walk into an IEP meeting, to have a Presume Inclusion shirt on.
Oh, for sure. Which is probably better than Inclusion AF. I don't know.
Inclusive AF is one of my favorites. Difference equals beauty is another. I'm like, it's also my favorite. Just know that we also
that's
have
about it for now.
Yeah, we have mugs and stuff like that. So today, if someone won a t-shirt but said, I'd rather have a mug, we'd say, okay. So know that we just want to give away something that will help you on your journey towards more inclusive practices.
And so I'm going to put the link to look at your options, so that whoever wins, you look in the shop, and then you're going to contact me and you're going to tell me what you want, what size you want, what color. We're going to figure it all out together. Okay. So this is where the options are. All right, Charmaine, we're ready.
All right. So my scientific way is to close my eyes, to scroll through the comments, and I will stop. And Michelle, how cool. Michelle lives in Colorado. Michelle,
we're headed to Colorado in 6 minutes.
I know, you're going to be there. So Michelle, look at the link, decide what you like, get a hold of Kristie. Tell your friends to come watch the replay, not only to get the information, but for them to have a chance to win a ticket. And that drawing will be tomorrow, Friday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time. And then I'll do the same thing. I'll come back to this, all these comments, and pick a winner for the ticket tomorrow night. And then Julie or Kristie will contact you about your free pass to the Summer Leadership Institute, which, this is kind of a no-brainer for your district to buy a district license. I mean, they will have such rich professional development that teachers, paras, families, everybody will be able to tap into. So I really encourage you. And I know, Julie, one year you even had like a sample letter that people, either teachers or parents, could send to their administrators. Do you have that again?
We will, and we can have it pretty soon too, Charmaine. Thanks for reminding us. We have a letter because a lot of parents say, I want my district to go, but I don't know how to make that happen. So there are two ways. One is we've got a letter that gives you the language that can help. And another is you can simply do an email introduction to say, Julie, Kristie, this is our special ed director. We would love for you to share with them everything about the Summer Leadership Institute, because our district desperately needs training in inclusive practices. And then we'll take it from there and hope that we can get them there so that they can be prepared and ready to teach and reach all of those beautiful children.
And last thing, y'all. Today we did 3 secrets to making lessons more inclusive, and we talked about turning lead to gold, and changing the lens that you see disability. And now we're talking a little bit about SLI. So I want to make sure that you get the very first link, which is the Facebook Oliver link, because that's where if you put your name and your email in there and it didn't come to you, check your spam, check your trash, check all kinds of places. If it still didn't come, just email me and I'll make sure you get everything. That gets you the free ebook. And then I will add tonight anything that I kind of promised, like, oh, we have a handout for the equity lens, or we have a thing about turning lead to gold that's a printable handy handout. So I'll put a few more things in there for you all as well. And then when we're ready with some materials to help you tell others about SLI, we can give you them as well. Okay.
Great.
And Julie and Kristie are going to be back March 31st to continue on them sharing their top secrets about how to turn any lesson into a more inclusive one. So if you get my weekly emails, tomorrow I'll be emailing out the show notes from today, resources that they've shared, some additional resources. So if you're not on my list, let me know. And thank you so much. I know, Kristie, you've got to run. You're going to be going from Ohio to Colorado in 2 minutes. And Julie, thank you so much. It's always, I just love the amount of learning that I continue to do when I'm with you both. So thank you so much for being here. I know all of our audience people are applauding you also.
Yeah. Well, thank you to all that attended today and for the work that you do, Charmaine, and all of the folks that joined us. We just need to all be together doing this work together for sure.
Yes,
That's
it's
right.
more
All
fun
right.
together. Okay. Take
All
care.
right. I'm going to take off. Thank you. Thank you again, Charmaine.
Alrighty. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.